Hello, I'm Sheryl McCarthy of the City University of New York. Welcome to One to One. Each week, we address issues of timely and timeless concern with newsmakers and the journalists who report on them, with artists, writers, scientists, educators, social scientists, government and nonprofit leaders. We speak with each one to one. Hardly a day goes by without there being a major article about a new project or a new controversy concerning downtown Brooklyn. Whether it's development around the Barclay Center, bicycle lanes, gentrification, it's here. Not to mention the ongoing squabbles with and within the City Council. Council Member Letitia James, who represents the 35th Councilmanic District in Brooklyn, is a lifelong Brooklynite. And except for when she went away to law school, she's been planted right here. Now she has set her sights on higher office, that of New York City's public advocate. I'm delighted to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Letitia, as I said, you're a Brooklyn native.
Yes.
What neighborhood did you grow up in, and has it changed a lot from when you were growing up there?
So I grew up in, back then it was called South Brooklyn. Today it's called Park Slope. I grew up on 10th Street between 5th and 6th in a brownstone. I'm a brownstone baby, which is why I love brownstones, and I love preserving the brownstone community of downtown Brooklyn. It's changed somewhat. I grew up, I was one of two African Americans on a block which primarily was dominated by Italians and the Irish. And we all worked together, we all lived together, we all played together. It was really one big happy family. And I see them often. They email me, they Facebook me. And a lot of them are still in the neighborhood.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. You think of it as infested with baby boomers, but...
Well, a lot of my friends represent those baby boomers.
Okay, all right, okay.
So they're still there. They've had families, and generations have held on to their homes. There has been some major changes. I mean, 7th Avenue has changed dramatically. 5th Avenue has changed dramatically. But some of the things still remain. PS 39, where I graduated, is still there. The Park Slope Library on 6th Avenue is still there. The Presbyterian Church is still there. Methodist Hospital, which was an institution, is still there. John Jay High School now has 4 schools within the same building. But nonetheless, Park Slope has had its challenges. It's lost a lot of its diversity, which is something that we all celebrate. But that really speaks to a larger issue, and that is the crisis regarding affordable housing in the city of New York.
Now, Brooklyn itself seems to be booming. Could you have imagined what it's like today, even 15 years ago?
No, and I was part of the change, the rezoning of downtown Brooklyn, which I approved almost 8-9 years ago, fundamentally transformed the landscape of downtown Brooklyn. We approved it, myself and Council Member Yaski at the time. We negotiated that plan. But what we negotiated is not what has transpired, and not that which has resulted. It's resulted in primarily all luxury housing along Flatbush Avenue. We were promised affordable housing. We were promised the development plan would result in more commercial development, more industrial development, and unfortunately that was not the case at all.
Well, how did they get away with violating the terms of the plan?
It was not a contract which was subject to certain terms. It was a lot of pronouncements, and they indicated that it was going to result in a significant amount of commercial and affordable housing. And unfortunately, it has not resulted in hardly any affordable housing. It's been minuscule, and there's been a great displacement of residents in downtown Brooklyn. And unfortunately, that's been very discouraging. And we're trying to play catch up now, trying to enforce more affordable housing and trying to change how we rezone the city of New York to, 1, require that there is permanent affordable housing, and 2, whenever we rezone, that there's mandatory inclusionary housing, as opposed to what we had when we rezoned downtown Brooklyn, which was voluntary as opposed to mandatory. And unfortunately, a lot of the developers decided
voluntary meant no housing.
Correct.
No affordable housing.
Right, and a lot of the developers decided exactly not to provide affordable housing, and they only did market rate and luxury housing.
So obviously those are some of the things that you do not like about the development
Yes.
that's happened. What are some of the things that you do like about the development that you've seen take place in Brooklyn?
Well, it's changed the landscape on Flatbush Avenue, which is the entrance into Brooklyn once you come off the Brooklyn Bridge. The streetscape is beautiful. There's more cafes. There have been some more jobs for residents in downtown Brooklyn. Some of our parks have been renovated as a result of the rezoning of downtown Brooklyn. So that has had its benefits. We've seen more stores located into downtown Brooklyn, and more tourists now are coming into downtown Brooklyn, and there's been an economic boom in downtown Brooklyn. And so there's been some positives, but there's also been some negatives. But going forward, we really need to balance it out.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's weighed too heavy towards developers and not towards residents who have lived there for a very, very long time. And what's really critically important is in Brooklyn is that we maintain our diversity. And we want to ensure that the diversity of the city of New York, particularly in the borough of Brooklyn, is maintained and that it does not lose its heart and its soul.
Now, you graduated from Lehman College,
Yes.
went to Howard University Law School. Did you ever work in the private sector, or has all your work as a lawyer been in the public sector?
And when I was in Washington, D.C., I tried to work for I did work for a couple of private law firms, some major law firms. And I recognized and realized that that was not for me. Being in an office, writing briefs, representing corporations, did not really speak to who I was not part of my narrative. I wanted to try it out, but I recognized that it just didn't sit well with me. And really my love and my passion was for serving the public. And as I tell my students, and as I tell the young people in my neighborhood and throughout the borough and throughout the city, is when you find your passion, you will never work again. And I don't consider what I do work. I consider what I do is my calling.
You worked for the Legal Aid Society for a
Yes.
while. What kinds of things did you learn working as a public defender?
So I was a summer intern at the district attorney's office in Manhattan. I worked for Mr. Morgenthau. But then decided that it was in my best interest to be a public defender, and I wanted to represent individuals. And it was baptism by fire. They just really throw you in the courtroom right after, a 3-week training, and you represent individuals, and you stand up for the Constitution, stand up for their rights, and make sure that their rights are protected and they're given a fair trial. And that's really critically important. And that training and those skills have assisted me in the City Council, when I was a former Assistant Attorney General, and as a former counsel in the state legislature negotiating bills. And it's really helpful, particularly when you're sandwiched between conservatives and Republican parties who basically want to make sure that we have more draconian measures in effect. And for me, it was really ensuring that our laws respect the humanity of all New Yorkers.
You've been in the City Council since 2003. I know it's a big question,
Yeah.
but what are some of the city issues facing the city that currently concern you the most?
So tonight, 50,000 individuals will go to the shelters in the city of New York. They're homeless. 20,000 of them are children. Most of those children look like me. The homelessness population is exploding. It's a major, major issue. The fact is that in the city, we defunded a voucher program called the Advantage Program, a subsidy program, which was funded by the state and the city. And
That helped people move out of transitional housing and subsidized their rents for a while until they could, okay.
Correct. And that has resulted in more individuals becoming homeless. We no longer have Section 8 vouchers. And again, the rezoning of the city of New York, particularly in voluntary inclusionary housing, most developers have opted not to provide have opted not to build affordable and low and/or housing for specialized populations. And that has resulted, obviously, in a significant number of homes being converted into market rate housing. In addition to that, as you know, the reforms in Albany in regards to Mitchell-Lama, rent control and rent stabilize, the fact that we have brought more Mitchell-Lama units out of the Mitchell-Lama program, and now they are now market rate housing, that too has added to the explosion in the homeless population.
Which means that people who are already there can stay there at lower rents, but they're not units available, affordable renters for people looking to get in, correct?
Correct. And what we need, obviously, is to stabilize affordable units. We need to build more affordable units. We need another similar Mitchell-Lama program in the city of New York. We need a mayor who's going to champion another Mitchell-Lama program in the city of New York. We need to issue bonds in the state of New York to build more affordable housing in the city of New York for moderate, working, and for families, women who are fleeing homes which unfortunately have experienced domestic violence, individuals living with AIDS, our veterans. It's really critically important, and people who are living with mental illness.
Right. Now, the stop and frisk
Yes.
policy of the New York City Police Department is currently being challenged in federal court.
Yes.
Although the police commissioner defends the policy, says it has really reduced crime, keeping people safe. How do you feel, how do you feel about the policy, and do you expect that there's going to be any change?
So I have advised the mayor and the police commissioner during my tenure as a city council. Let me just say this. When I was an assistant attorney general, I, along with some attorneys in the Civil Rights Bureau, under the leadership of then Attorney General Eliot Spitzer, we brought the first action against NYPD back in the early 2001, 2002. And here I am now as a member of the City Council, and I have filed an amicus brief in their case that's currently before the federal court, and in the case that is before another federal court judge on the stop and frisk practices within public housing. And I have been active
Arresting people for trespassing in their
in their homes, and
Right.
individuals who live within public housing who, unfortunately, for whatever reason, do not have identification, they're immediately arrested, which is wrong. And so I believe in the stop and frisk program if it is done correctly and consistent with the Constitution and the law. But as you know, the practical experience of the stop and frisk practices, particularly in central Brooklyn and throughout the city of New York, is they engage in racial profiling. They primarily focus on young African American and Latinos, men, individuals who are between 16 and around 28. And they arrest them, and they stop and they frisk them primarily because they're looking for guns, and because they fit a certain profile. And the reality is that the vast majority of time, most of these men are doing absolutely nothing. And most of these men do not fit what they call a 51, which is a complaint filed by individuals who are the victims of crime, who
Right.
give a description of an individual, they don't match that description at all. And these are oftentimes illegal, unconstitutional stops just based on whims.
Right.
And based on, again,
That can
racial
result in
profiling.
confrontations that become more serious.
They result in confrontations that become more serious. They, humiliate the individuals. They build a distrust between communities of color and NYPD. And as you know, NYPD, in order to address crime in the city of New York, have to rely upon the public. And that distrust, unfortunately, we're sowing the seed of distrust in communities of color. And so what I suspect at the end of the day, and I have told the mayor and I've told the police commissioner, that I suspect that NYPD will be put under federal monitoring. And that's unfortunate, because NYPD really should be subject to the police commissioner and who should be reporting to the mayor of the city of New York, who recognizes and respects the rights
Right.
of all individuals in the city of New York. I know clergy members who have been stopped and frisked. My dentist, who's African American, has been stopped and frisked. My nephew, who was in college, who has visited me from time to time from Delaware, has been stopped and frisked. My neighbors have been stopped and frisked. And all that they have in common is that they're men who are African American and who fall within a certain age group.
Right. We're going to take a short break. Then we'll be back with more with Council Member Letitia James after this message.
Did you know CUNY leads the way for students with disabilities?
CUNY Leads means linking employment, academics, and disability services. If you're a CUNY student with a visible or invisible disability, the City University of New York offers eligible students free career development and placement services. To find out if you qualify, visit cuny.edu/CUNYLeads. CUNY leads to the career I always wanted.
Welcome back to One to One. I'm Sheryl McCarthy of the City University of New York, and I'm talking with Letitia James, Council Member of the 35th District in Brooklyn. The Council recently approved a living wage bill that is being challenged by Mayor Bloomberg. What does the bill do? And is it the most progressive living wage bill in the country?
So the bill that is currently, that was passed by the City Council and we overrode the mayor's veto. Basically, whenever there's public subsidies involved in any development, individuals who are part of receive subsidies would have to pay their employees a certain wage, and a wage which is above and beyond the minimum wage. And the mayor of the city of New York opposed that, and he was of the opinion that it would basically stifle the private market and would stifle growth and development.
We're talking about an $11 wage or $10.50 if it also includes plus benefits. Right.
In some cases throughout the city of New York, individuals are being paid that, based on minimum wage, and we argued in the city that we should not be in a position to subsidize poverty wages, and that what we really needed to do is promote individuals who are working on these sites, try to bring them into the middle class, and try to sustain their families. And oftentimes we uncovered that individuals who are working on public sites oftentimes were relying upon the public dole, receiving food stamps, public assistance,
despite doesn't make sense.
Despite the fact that they were working.
So has the bill gone into effect, or is it being held up because
it's being held up as a result of litigation in the Mayor of the City of New York?
Okay. The Atlantic Yards, I know you have plenty to say about that, is certainly, I guess, the biggest development project in Brooklyn. The Barclay Center seems to be quite successful, but there's a lot of other elements to the project. How are you feeling about? I know you oppose the eminent domain proceeding that allowed the city to take this land and develop this, take this property away from private citizens and develop Atlantic Yards. How do you feel about the rest of the project? And I mean, is the current plan a done deal, or is it not?
So there's two parts to the Atlantic Yards. The arena, as you know, is completed. It's been wildly successful, but there have been some challenges. The rest of the development project is 16 buildings. Currently, they are only going forward on one building. They agreed that they would build at Union. They're not building at Union. In fact, today there is a big rat in front of the Barclays Arena, sponsored by some construction unions. The workers inside the arena have a labor dispute which is yet to be resolved. The rest of the development project is on hold. The developer would like to change the underlying agreement and push out the rest of the development for another 25 years as opposed to the original 10. And the affordable housing is being built right now, one building, only one building, and the developer reneged on his promise to build larger units, 2 and 3 bedrooms. It's a promise that he made to the public. He reneged on that, and he indicated that he was only going to build studios and 1 bedrooms. I testified at a hearing before HPD where I said that this was really a travesty, that we were giving the developer public dollars, and he should honor his commitments to the public. 1, to build more affordable housing. 2, it should not take 25 years. And 3, he should build larger units for families that desperately need it in the borough of Brooklyn and beyond.
So what can the city do to hold him to what he said he was going to do?
Well, at this point in time, HPD has approved the financing. He is going to renege on his promise. He's only going to build studios and 1 bedrooms, which primarily are going to cater to single adults in the city of New York. 2, the affordable housing, like I said, it's only 1 building. The rest of it is on hold. He basically says that because of the financing and because, the opponents, including myself, held up the project for 10 years, that he needs 25 years to build out. I seriously question that. I'm of the opinion that he just doesn't have the financing at all.
Why wouldn't he want to build a larger apartments? I mean, what does he care if it's a one-bedroom or whether it's a two-bedroom that a family pays more for than?
Because you can get more studios in one bedrooms, and you can
make more money.
Make more money.
Okay.
And so he reneged upon his promise for affordable housing, open space, on the jobs. A number of the individuals who have supported the program and in fact, you know, boycotted my office, he promised them jobs under a program, and all of these individuals relied upon that promise to their detriment, and they were not provided jobs. And right now there's litigation related to those individuals who were not provided jobs, and there's also litigation related to the developer's ability to push out the project for the next 25 years, which I oppose because I do not want my community, the community that I represent, to be a construction zone for the next 25 years.
What can the city council do? I mean, you can make noise, obviously. You can embarrass him publicly. Is that what you can do, or can you do more than that?
No, what we can do is change the law so that when an individual makes a promise, particularly as it relates to the size of the units, that it follows the money, and that it's tied to the money.
But will that be retroactive to him?
No, it will not be retroactive to him. It's going forward, it will be prospective.
Okay. The mayoral race, several former council members are vying for the job, including public advocate Bill de Blasio of Brooklyn, who I gather is a longtime friend and mentor of yours. Do you have a favorite? You have any favorites in the race, or a favorite in the race?
I don't really have a favorite, and I wouldn't describe Bill de Blasio as a mentor. My mentor is my mother. Bill de Blasio and I worked in the city council. The speaker of the city council is also a candidate for the mayor of the city of New York. But I did stand with Bill de Blasio. We were probably the most vocal opponents against the extension of the third term. We in fact sued
of
the Mayor Bloomberg. We sued the administration, including the city council. We were not successful, and the mayor received a third term, I believe illegally and in violation of the charter.
A lot of people are making a lot of noise about an Anthony Weiner candidacy. How do you feel about that?
Well, you know, I'm one who believes in second chances, but I don't know whether or not the voters will give former Congress Member Anthony Weiner a second chance. Nonetheless, he is sitting on $3 million. It's eligible for campaign financing. He could probably run a very competitive race. And he was a force to be reckoned with in Congress. And so if Congressmember Weiner decides to run for mayor, I wish him well.
You are running for public advocate.
Correct.
Why? What made you decide to seek that position?
So some have argued that I've used my tenure in the city council to raise issues that people care about, a progressive agenda. One of the issues that I have been talking about all throughout the last couple of weeks and months as I've traveled all throughout 5 boroughs is wage stagnation, growing income inequality, economic instability in the city of New York, and job instability. And it's really critically important that we have someone in the Office of Public Advocate who can serve as a watchdog, who can engage in checks and balances on the mayor as well as the city council. I've done that in my role as a member of the city council when I uncovered the City Time scandal, which was the biggest scandal in the city of New York, where we recovered $500 million, where I held 3 hearings. Again, that was checks and balances on the mayor, who has engaged in outsourcing. Where I stood
this is automatic payroll system for the city that was supposed to be more efficient and cheaper. Is that system up and running? Is it working now?
It is working, but not all agencies have been equipped and outfitted with the technology. But there was basically a company, a private company, that unfortunately was ripping off taxpayers, and no one was really watching the store. Someone called me anonymously. I was chair of contracts. I held 3 hearings, reported the individual in the company to DOI, to the controller's office. He was indicted, convicted. We recovered $500 million. Then I was transferred because I had a number of other contracts that I wanted to review. I was transferred to the Committee on Sanitation, and as you know, I've got, I guess, angels watching over me because 30 days into my tenure as chair of sanitation, we had the biggest snowstorm in the city of New York. The mayor was out of town. It was a complete disaster. and I held hearings all throughout the city of New York, and we came up with a package of recommendations and legislations to address that. We're also engaging in some recycling in my committee on sanitation and recycling. We are also banning, in all likelihood, probably banning styrofoam in the city. We are also looking to engage in environmental justice in the city of New York on how we deal with our waste.
So obviously a lot of issues that you can continue to advocate for as a public advocate.
Correct. And again, the crisis in affordable housing, and moving forward and making sure that we mandate when we rezone affordable housing, and ensuring that whenever we give out tax dollars, that there's mandatory affordable housing, and that this inclusionary zoning is a mandatory zoning process, which includes affordable housing for residents and for New Yorkers who need it most. It's really speaking up on behalf of working families, on low-income and moderate-income families, and talking about the wage disparities that continue to exist in the city of New York, particularly as it relates to women.
Well, there's always a lot of work to do.
Yes.
If you're a public official in New York City, and there will continue. It's likely to keep you and other elected officials busy for indefinitely. I want to thank City Council Member Letitia James for joining me today. For the City University of New York and One to One, I'm Sheryl McCarthy. If there are any people you'd like to hear from or topics you'd like us to explore, please let us know. You can write to me at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016, or you can go to the website at cuny.tv and click on Contact Us. I look forward to hearing from you.